Today is June 19th, 2008. This is an interview with Cavan Sullivan. We're sitting just outside of Petersburg, Illinois. How are you doing, Cavan?
Doing very well.
Great. We'll start out with the easy questions for you. So, about age and date of birth.
All right, well, it's good to start with the easy ones. My name is Cavan Sullivan, like you said before, age 25. I was born April 10th, 1983.
Great. And where were you born?
I was born at St. John's Hospital in Springfield, Illinois.
Okay. And then you grew up here on the farm here?
Yep, I have not left. Much to my folks' dismay, I'm sure.
Okay. Now, we know you're living here with your mother and father, but what about some of your other family?
Yep, we all actually, I'm the oldest. I'm 25. My sister is 23. She's going to be getting married this fall, or I guess next spring. Yeah. She's going to kill me for not knowing that. And then my other sister, Shiloh, she's is a senior in college, and my brother Steele is a freshman in college. So and we all still live here, and we've all commuted to Illinois College for our undergrad. So we've all kind of been around here, and we're all pretty tight.
What about aunts and uncles in the area?
We have many. My dad has 7 brothers and sisters, and they grew up at Lake Petersburg over here, just outside of Petersburg. And I have 36 cousins that live within a 3-mile radius of here. And all but two of the groups of the cousins, their land actually pretty much attaches this timber here. So they're all out here. I mean, we are. My friends always kid us. It's like it's a compound out here. It's like Ruby Ridge or something.
Your entire family all around you.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your family history and how your family came to Illinois?
Yeah. What I've been told, I mean, it's kind of through like this is oral history we're doing here. Is kind of oral history of the Sullivan family. My great-great-grandfather, Peter Sullivan, was a farmer, and he moved to Macomb, Illinois. And I don't really remember where they moved from. I think they moved from southern Illinois or from Indiana. But they moved to Macomb, and they built a homestead along the Lomoyne River. And it's actually right where the Western University's golf course sits. That's right where their house used to be. My grandpa was born in the house there right at the corner where I think it's hole number 9 is on the WIU golf course. And they lived there for many years. My great-great-grandfather lived there, and then it went on to my great-grandfather. And my great-grandfather was mowing with some horses back in I guess it would have been in the 30s. He was mowing with some horses, and the horses got spooked, and they ran out into the road, and he got hit by a car and was struck and killed. And my grandpa was 12 years old, and he was, along with his brothers, he had 2 brothers. They ran their entire family farm as they were growing up. My grandpa was 12, and his one older brother was, I think, 2 years older than he was. And so they together ran this entire family farm as they were growing up through middle school and through high school. And my grandpa was a phenomenal athlete, and he went on to Western Illinois University, and he holds 16 varsity letters there at Western. He has 4 for 4 years in football, basketball, baseball, and track. So he went to Western, and then he got a teaching certificate and went on to become a principal and one of the founding members of the Illinois Principals Association. But he always farmed up until he got out of college. And then I think the family farm was sold up there. And they moved from Macomb. He met my grandma, Sullivan, who was a Kavanaugh, and they're from the Monmouth area. And they were farmers for many, many years prior to that. And I really don't know the history of that side of the family as well, but I know my grandma used to say that her grandfather would always tell stories of having big bags of nickels that Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show would pay them for hay when they came through the Monmouth area, because that's what they got paid in for the shows from the public. So farming has really been really ingrained in the history of our family on both sides, on my dad's side. And they came down here then in the 70s. I guess it was maybe earlier than that, 60s. They moved down here. My dad was in 8th grade to Petersburg from up in Oquawka, where they lived at the time on the Mississippi River. And they grew up down here in this area, and pretty much all of his brothers and sisters all still live in this area. My mom is from Springfield, and I guess Pleasant Plains, and her mom grew up on a farm in Shelbyville. And the Uphoff family, she's an Uphoff, have huge farms down in the southern part of the state, and they're all still farmers down there. And so, that's another. I got farming on both sides all the way back, I guess. My grandfather on my mom's side, John Liebman was his name. He grew up. He was an orphan. He grew up in an orphanage in Lincoln, and both of his parents passed away during the Depression. And he was from actually Romania. His parents were immigrants from Romania, and his mom was pregnant with him when she came over through Ellis Island. And he was born, and I guess his mom died when he was very young, and his dad died when he was 3. And him and his 2 sisters went to the orphanage. They grew up there, and then he went to the Navy and met my grandma, who had a teaching certificate and was down teaching in the Canal Zone in Panama. And they met down in Panama during the war. And the way that the story was told is one of his officers said, "Hey, my wife teaches with a nice girl from Illinois. You need to meet her. You're from Illinois." And so they met up, and I guess the rest is ancient history now. But he had some farming background too. Growing up on the orphanage, they all had jobs to do and taking care of the different livestock they had on the orphanage, because they raised a lot of their own crops for the kids to eat there.
Okay, now you spent you've grown up on this farm.
Mm-hmm.
What about the chores that you had to do here?
Well, there's always something to do. That's for sure. There's never a time where there's nothing to do today. No, there's going to always be something to do. Different chores. My first vivid memory of doing anything was I would go with my dad. We used to milk cows here, and I'd be in one of those little baby backpacks. And I remember reaching over my dad's shoulder and petting the cow as he was putting the automatic milkers on the cows. And all the way through. Gathering eggs used to be a really fun thing that we used to always. We had to go gather eggs with Mom. But that's back when we had 25 chickens. Now, when we have 600 pheasants, it's more like, I got to go gather eggs, which I got to do tonight at some point still. So there's always chores to do, be it mowing the yard. My dad really kind of takes pride in doing that kind of stuff. But there's always stuff to do when you have this many livestock, and this diversity of livestock. It's not exactly like row crops, where once you get it planted and you get everything sprayed, you just kind of hang out and just monitor things until the harvest. It's a day in, day out, making sure everything's healthy, everything's taken care of. So you want to be retroactive, so you're looking for problems before they even exist, and so you're taking care of them.
What about, are there some chores that you hated as a child that you couldn't?
Yeah, I'm sure my mom could probably think of more of them than I can right now. I really hate doing anything inside. If I was told that, you got to clean your room, which I'd do that, I'd probably be like, gotta clean my room, or gotta wash dishes or wash clothes. That would be anything inside would be the worst job for me. I'd hate to have to be inside.
Okay. What about friends on the farm?
I've had many friends come here and stay with us on the farm. Growing up in high school, a lot of my friends would come over and they'd see what we're doing, think it's pretty neat and different things. Once I got to college, though, a lot of kids that had rural backgrounds that were interested in agriculture and livestock, they saw what we were doing and it was completely different. We're doing stuff with animals, but it's not cattle and hogs or sheep and horses. It's something that's completely foreign to them, and they were very drawn to that. And one of my good friends, Zach Lancaster, comes out and he's helped us quite a bit on the farm. He's from Palmyra, and he's done a lot of work with us with the deer. And some of my friends from Chicago and St. Louis, they come down here on occasion, and they're just blown away by it. I mean, somebody who's completely foreign to livestock to be 10 feet away from a buffalo. I mean, you guys kind of saw what that was today. I mean, it'd kind of be an intimidating, pretty neat experience. So they really like it. So yeah, we've got a lot of friends that come here, and with what we've got, there's a lot of different people that want to come and take tours of the place. So we've met a lot of people and made a lot of friends over the years, just from people having a common interest in nature and wildlife.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
All righty. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it.
That's great. It was really good discussion.
Wanted his kids to grow up on a farm, and he's given a lot of great opportunities, and all the things that we have done here would not have been possible without having the land. And I mean, there's a lot of things we've been able to do, and have been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of success, but without having my parents have the land they have, I would not have been able to do any of it.
Now, growing up on a farm, I'm sure you probably had some chores to do.
Yes. Yep.
What were the good chores to do?
Well, probably the earliest memory of doing things on the farm, I remember probably my very first vivid memory of my whole life. I remember being in one of those little baby backpacks, you know. My dad would get up in the morning. He used to milk cows. We used to have dairy cows here, and he'd put me in this little backpack. I remember leaning over his shoulder and petting the cows as he was putting the cows in their milking stanchions and stuff. And so, I mean, morning chores have been something that we've done forever. I mean, for the last 25 years. And good chores would always be like getting to help Dad with that kind of stuff. Getting to gather eggs used to be a good thing when there was only like 50 chickens. Now we have 500, 600 pheasants. It's not exactly a good chores anymore. Bad chores would probably be anything with having to clean out pens or clean out bedding straw or pulling weeds or anything like that. Those are all things that you really didn't want to have to do.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've been with your sister most of the day, you know, going around here, and we saw your brother a little earlier. What kinds of things, I mean, were there still little sibling rivalries, like, oh, I don't want to do that, so, you know, my sister should go clean that out? Or
well, yes, actually there are. Shelby, well, the girls would always say, well, those are the boys' jobs, that we, like, things outside that we had to do, but we are still expected to do things inside to take care of some of the household stuff, which is the way it should be, but we always would kind of go back and forth where, well, mowing should be one of the boys' jobs to have to do, but the girls still want to do the mowing sometimes, but there's somewhat a double standard, and I think we'd all agree with that. But yeah, and as far as rivalries, I wouldn't say there's rivalries. That's probably my thing I'm most fortunate about is the relationship I have with my brothers and sisters. Is we all have grown up together, and we all are great friends. My sister's fiance he's like a brother to me. I mean, he's been around here for 9 years now, Matt. And I mean, we're all just a very, very tight, close family. We do everything together. I mean, when we go on vacation, we go on vacation together. I mean, when we've got problems, we all deal with it together. I was in the hospital. I got injured playing football, and everybody, all my brothers and sisters and cousins banded together to do my chores for me while I was in the hospital for about 30 days. So, I mean, we really try to watch out for each other on stuff.
Well, that's great. That's a great support net that you
Yeah.
What about other friends outside of your family? I mean, growing up on the farm, did you ever have other friends coming onto the farm?
Well, you don't have a lot of friends. You got manure on your shoes all the time. You know, you just no. We've had lots and lots of friends that over the years that love to come out to the farm and enjoy what we do out here. I mean, it's so unique. I mean, even just to farm life, what we do is kind of our own niche with the wildlife. That even kids that grew up on farms around hogs and beef cattle or poultry, they see what we're doing as something different. It's something interesting, and even people that might be complacent with what they have grown up with see our thing as something unique, and they're like, wow, I'd like to see how that works. So a lot of my friends from rural areas are especially interested in it. My friends that are into deer hunting, they love coming and seeing the deer and helping work out with the deer. One of my friends, Zach Lancaster, has come out on many occasions and helped us with when we're working deer and doing the deer handling stuff. Some of my buddies from Chicago and St. Louis have come just to visit the farm sometimes, and they're completely blown away by, like, I took them back there to see the buffalo like we did, and they were they were very intimidated at first being that close to an animal, let alone a buffalo. So yeah, we have had lots and lots of friends come from, especially once we got to college, more people were wanting to come and see what we had going on here. And I mean, when you're in high school, I mean, a lot of the people had been here at different times, so it was more something that was commonplace to them. But once you got to, when we went to Illinois College, everybody really started wanting to come out and see our place.
Yeah. Now, when you went to high school, were most of the kids from rural areas, or?
Yes. The majority of our high school is a rural agriculture background, where at least one of their parents did something in an agriculture-related field, be it being a farmer or working at one of the implement or mechanic shops or maybe a seed company. But I would say, I mean, at least probably 80% of them their parents were involved with agriculture at some level. The other would be people that parents worked in Springfield and commuted from Petersburg to Springfield. And which is kind of sad is you're seeing Petersburg more shift sometimes to see there's more people living in Springfield and working in Springfield, and it's become more of a bedroom community. And it's kind of a challenge that Menard County is facing, where people are living in Petersburg and paying the real estate taxes, but that's about it. They go to bed in Petersburg and they go do everything else in Springfield. So that's a challenge that our small rural county is combating right now, and trying to encourage industry and development in this area, aside from agriculture or I mean, we've got the cornfields and everything and the livestock, but the next step in the process is somewhere else, and it'd be nice to have the industry here also.
Yeah. What are some of the industries they're trying to bring in?
Well, right now it's tough. I mean, they've been talk of. I mean, it would be nice if you can get an ethanol plant. I mean, that's the whole new thing right now is to produce ethanol, but really there's really wouldn't be enough of a workforce right now in Menard County to do something like that, because the demographics, there's so many elderly people, retirement village type people. I mean, they're coming out and moving out to the country for the good life once that they retire. And I'm sure the people in the county board would probably be very upset at me saying some of the things I am right now, but it just seems like I don't know, some of the industries that could be attracted here. I mean, we've got the raw materials to do a lot of the stuff. I mean, with the agriculture products. I mean, we're not on an artery like the Mississippi River for hauling grain or moving grain, but I mean, we have an opportunity to do something. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of on the spot right now trying to think of something, but there just needs to be more opportunity for people to do work in this county and not have to go someplace else. I guess what I'm saying, and that would attract more people to come to the county that are younger couples that have kids, and then you can kind of grow. And I've been told before by people that are involved with county politics that like 10,000 people population is like we talked about benchmarks before. That's like the special number. That's like the magic number. When you get 10,000 people, something's happening. You got the jobs. You've got this. I think Menard County is like 6,000 or 7,000 people right now, I think, is what the population is at, and that includes Athens, Petersburg, Greenview, then all the little ones: Atterbury, Tallulah, Rock Creek, all the initials in Porta High School: Petersburg, Oakford, Rock Creek, Tallulah, and Atterbury.
Okay. To kind of get back to the time when you were in high school now, you were in 4-H?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you did in 4-H?
Well, I mean, a lot of times when you're a kid in 4-H, you decide to join a local 4-H chapter. And my first year I joined the Blue Ribbon 4-H Club, and I just was like showing chickens, and I had a club calf, and we had some lambs and stuff that we were showing, and some hogs, and we really enjoyed it. Since I was the oldest, I was the first one to get into it, and then when my sister Shelby and Shiloh started getting to the age where they wanted to be in it, and a couple of my cousins decided they wanted to be in it, we decided to start our own 4-H club. So we started our own like family 4-H club, and that was kind of went on for a couple of years, and we all took turns being president, and so that's kind of how the 4-H went for us, and we did a lot of the volunteer stuff with the other 4-H clubs in town. When I really started developing the farm was through the FFA, though. Okay. When I was I guess 6th grade, the FFA instructor at Porta High School, Boyd Paulsmeyer, he knew I had a lot of different. I had like a bunch of turkeys and geese and ducks at the time, and they have an FFA show every year at the high school where all the little kids come in and have a farm tour basically. And he's like, well, we really want somebody to have this and this and this animal. And I'm like, well, I've got some of those. So before I even got to high school or junior high, I was bringing stuff to the high school 4-H day, and all the little kids would come in. And so I started participating in the FFA very early on. And once I got to high school, I knew, this is something that I wanted to do. It's something that was going to be very up my alley. All the classes and all the contacts that could be made through the FFA would be something that would benefit me a lot. So I joined the FFA in my freshman year and took the ag classes, and I started my projects, which were at the time, my first year I had a beef project, I had a swine project, I had a forage crop project, so I was keeping records on our hay fields. I had did I say poultry? I think I said poultry. I don't know, I get all turned around. But I had like 3 or 4 projects, and I kept records on them. I had a wildlife management project along with it, so I was keeping records on all the stuff that I was doing. I just write down each day what I did. The wildlife management was something I really, really loved. That was my passion, was going deer hunting and going out and spend time in the woods and managing and looking at what we can do to better produce big deer, more game birds, improve habitat. And I think my second year, I guess I was a sophomore, I got second in the state of Illinois with my wildlife management project, and I was really excited about that. But the kid that beat me raised a bunch of pheasants, and I thought, well, I can raise pheasants. I've raised chickens and turkeys and ducks, and I'd raised pheasants before. My first pheasants I actually got when I was 12 years old. I got like 200 eggs from the state of Illinois, and I tried hatching them out. I hatched out like 19 of them. It was just terrible. It was a massacre. And the ones I raised, half of them got loose, so I'd like 4 when I was all said and done. So it was kind of a flop. But I had raised pheasants before. I thought, I could really do something like this my sophomore year. So started raising birds. I got like 200 the first year, and gradually built it up each year after that. And that has that next year I came back and I won the state FFA wildlife management, and I went on to nationals, and I think I got like a bronze medal in nationals with the project. So it was something that we did really well. It was something that was unique. It was making some money, so that was always good. It was something that I really had a lot of enjoyment for. So, Shelby, is that? Is that blind? Oh, that was my buddy I was talking about. So where was I saying? Oh yeah. Yeah, so the FFA really was my springboard that got me started doing a lot of this stuff with the wildlife and agriculture. So Boyd Paulsmeyer getting me involved with some of this stuff was a key thing. I really am thankful for having that opportunity. And the farm grew once I went to college because I realized I wasn't going to get a Division I football scholarship, so I needed some way to pay for it. And all through high school, I've been making money raising pheasants, and I mowed yards and stuff too to help build some capital to invest in the pheasant farm and get it built up. But I thought, I can do this. I can pay for my school raising game birds. So increased production somewhat in 2002 when I was going on to college, and it's kind of snowballed ever since. Some days for the better and some days for the worst.
Now, your father had a pretty conventional farm with it being different
yes.
cattle. how was it for you to work with him and switching it over to doing something that's not really so conventional? I mean,
At first, it was like pulling teeth.
Really?
At first, trying to get Dad convinced that this is something to do. I mean, my dad is a very, very creative person, which is in my benefit because he's very, very insightful and can see things done and can see things down the road, how things are going to turn out. And I mean, I explained to him that, I mean, wild pheasant populations are dwindling, and there is an opportunity to raise pheasants for people, for hunters, that, I mean, we could fill, and I've got the knowledge to do it, and we've got some of the facilities that we can convert to do it. And I mean, at first it's like, well, let's just go slowly. Let's just get a couple here, and each year get a little bit more. Which he's wise. His saying was always, "Don't get too big too fast." Is what he. Because I mean, I'm always wanting to jump in with both feet and both arms, just ready to go and make a big splash and just do it. And he would want me to be more cautious and take more thought in it, which is good. I mean, it keeps me from getting overextended and doing more than I need to. But once I convinced him that this is something that can be done, and it should be done, I mean, for the benefit of our farm, I mean, he was all about it. He was behind it 100%, and so was my mom. So at first, it was kind of like, okay, this is something that's new, and then at first they're like, well, I don't know. But then after that, I mean, it was all systems go, pretty much.
Great. Now, you started to say that you've been able to pay for your school through pheasant farming?
Yep. I mean, that's something with all four of us kids. We talked about it. We were told that, I mean, it's going to be our responsibility to pay for our education. And not because, I mean, parents want to be jerks and just because they say, well, you know, they're being cheapskates. It's for us to get the most out of it. Both my parents, I told you before, are in education, and they've seen a lot of kids go on to school where their parents pay $20,000 a year for their kid to go and party all night long and then get kicked out at the end of their junior year or sophomore years because their grades are too low, or they're just not focusing, or they're just wasting their time and their parents' money. And my parents said, you know, I mean, we know you're good kids, we know you guys are hard workers, but you're going to get much more out of it if you buy it yourself and pay for it yourself. So they have been very, very supportive. I mean, when I started the pheasant farm, I took a loan from my dad and got the farm started. But the reason I wanted to build the farm up was to pay for college. So that is what it has done, and that's what it's doing for my younger brother now. He's going to be going on to school this fall. He's going to be I mean, he works on the pheasant farm, the deer farm. So the deer farm I don't know if this is something the IRS would get mad about or not, but the deer farm was created out of necessity. The pheasant farm was doing very, very well, and during my junior year of college, the way financial aid and FAFSA works, if you're making money, they're wanting you to pay more money. They're expecting you to pay more money. So I thought, why does it make sense for me to be paying all this money for college because I'm being successful? Why don't I reinvest this money back into my own business and show less of an income? So I thought, okay, well, this opportunity came to buy some deer and buy out an existing scent company. And so I did. I bought several of his deer, and I bought his contacts. Is what I bought, his contact information. And from there is what spurred the deer, because I'd been wanting to do it for a long time, but I really didn't have a good reason enough until I thought, well, you know, I'd save money by buying this. So I guess it's a tax shelter. I don't know what it would be called. I should have taken more business classes at school rather than biology classes. But the deer farm was created because of a financial need to have somewhere to invest money and not be spending as much on education, I guess. So I don't know if that's neither here nor there, I guess.
No, that's great. So I mean, you've basically grown up here. You've been building this farm to basically support your education, and you've gotten it to a pretty good point where it has. Can you kind of explain what the farm looks like?
Yeah, well, the main facet of the farm right now is the pheasants. That's when the first thing you'll see when you're coming to the driveway is you'll be blown away by the number of pheasants that you see. And each year we have been producing, last year we produced around 30,000 ringneck pheasants, half of which we sell as day-old chicks. The other half are grown either as adult birds or as half-grown birds, and they're marketed at either 7 weeks or 20 weeks. And that's kind of the pheasant end of the operation. The second part that you notice would be the deer. We raise white-tailed deer, and like I said before, they are raised predominantly for deer attractant. And we also raise trophy bucks for release on shooting preserves, where they restock genetically powerful bucks on these populations to improve the genetics in these pens. And then the third part would be the buffalo. And they're probably the smallest. They take up the most space, but they're the smallest part of the business. And I mean, mostly those are for our own consumption, and we have like about 30 people that buy buffalo from us. So that's the smallest part of the business, but it takes up a large majority of the property that would not be suitable for the other types.
Can you explain, what kinds of buildings do we have on the property for you to do all this?
Okay. Well, we have several brooder barns, which we've been in one or two earlier this morning, and what they're designed to replicate a nurturing environment for baby chicks, and that keeps the chicks at a certain temperature, which would be about 100 degrees to start off, 90 to 100 degrees, and that keeps them nice and warm, and that way they can develop and grow in a good environment, and where it's dry and keeps them from getting chilled or wind blown on them. Another building we'd have toured would be the hatchery facility, and that's where we gather all the eggs from and bring them to, and then that's where the incubation and hatching is done. We have several outbuildings where animals the deer use that barn for shelter, and there's also where we do the urine collection. We've got several areas where we do the bottle feeding for the fawns. Then we have a horse stall system where my mom has her saddle horses. So I guess that'd be a kind of a look of how many. I'm probably forgetting a couple of them, but that's the farm buildings that we've got on the property.
Now we went up to a pasture where the buffalo are.
Mm-hmm.
What property-wise, what do you have here?
On this residence, there are 30 acres. And then we have about 450 up the road. Right here, this is where the livestock operation is occurring on this 30 acres. The farm up the road is forage crop, so we're raising alfalfa there, and then row crops like beans and corn. And the Sangamon River water right now is what we're growing there now. Half the farm was flooded. So
that's not so good. You're growing alfalfa and corn
and soybeans.
And that's 400 acres. Are you growing that for the livestock? Or?
The alfalfa is used for the livestock, yeah. The row crops are all cash rent, where there is like a tenant farmer that is farming the row crops. And we have discussed possibly in the next couple of years taking that over and farming it ourselves when my brother's now going to be out of school and he'll have a little bit more time, hopefully. And my goal would be to farm it ourselves. I think we've got the know-how to do it. It's just finding the time to do it, So that would be my goal, would be to start farming it ourselves eventually.
So you're renting out to the same tenant every year, or different tenants?
Yep. There's actually 2 tenants that split the farm about in half, and then each of them have their half that they farm, and they are like rotating between beans and corn usually. I think this year they're going to go corn again. Well, they tried to go in corn again because of the prices of corn, but they are in charge of the row crops, and they just pay a cash rent for an acre, for each acre.
And then you're growing the alfalfa?
Yes. The alfalfa is we're growing alfalfa for our livestock here. And what we did, we took the area that's growing alfalfa now was row crop production, but it was low soil quality, and the yields weren't as high on that land. And we thought, well, we can put it into an alfalfa, which can utilize lower quality soil and get it to produce more efficiently for our uses. So we put a bunch of it into alfalfa 3 years ago.
Okay. what other types of feed are you having to bring onto the land here then to feed the livestock if you're just using the alfalfa?
We are like the alfalfa is the forage, or it would be a forage crop, so that'd be like a roughage for the animals. And we don't feed the pheasants a lot of alfalfa. I mean, they can. We do sometimes put bales of alfalfa out in the wintertime for them. Their ration consists of a pellet that we buy from a feed mill there's several of them that we do business with. But what it is, it's a high protein. It's about 28% protein it starts out at, and it's got corn in the mix. It's got soybeans in the mix. It's got amino acids, vitamins, dicalcium phosphate. I mean, all the things that animals need to have a balanced diet. And having a pheasant ration like that is kind of important that it's a complete feed, because if you mix it ourselves, sometimes they pick out things that they want and then they leave other parts, so you're not getting a balanced ration. So you want to have it in a pelletized feed is what we've found. We will supplement some corn. We might spread some corn on the ground, give them something to pick at, so they're not picking on each other, they're picking at the food on the ground. And the pheasants, I mean, they eat essentially the same diet all the way through. The only thing that changes is the protein level, which is controlled by pretty much the amount of soybeans that's in the mix. So it goes from 28 to 20, then down to 16%, depending on their age. So the older they are, the less protein they require. The deer we're bringing on the farm, we're bringing on a feed ration that contains a very, very big balanced mix of seeds. It's got soybeans, roasted soybeans, it's got corn, it's got oats, it's got yeast, it's got wheat. It's got sunflower seeds in it. It's got a product called calf manna, which is like a calf supplement they use for dairy calves that has a lot of high calcium in it. And then it has like an alfalfa meal pellet in it. And then we're also giving them supplement alfalfa hay that they have free range or free access to at all times. And the buffalo, we don't give the cow herd really any supplemental grain. Unless it gets really, really cold out. Because if you give them too much grain, they get too heavy and too fat on their calves get too big too fast, I guess, inside of them, and they have calving problems. So you don't want to feed the cows too much. When we're feeding out buffalo, the last 60 days we put them on as much corn as they want, just straight shelled corn, and then all the alfalfa hay that they can eat. So that kind of gives them that last little push where it puts, like I said before, that buffalo don't have marbling, like they don't have intermuscular fat, but it puts a little bit of fat around the edges of the meat for a little bit of trim to kind of give a more moist texture to the meat.
Now, how many pheasants? Let's start with just the pheasants first. How many pheasants do you keep on the farm?
Okay, right now we have close to 6,000 pheasants. That's mostly young birds. Through the year, we will progressively switch groups. So, I mean, really, there's probably not going to ever be more than like 5,000 to 6,000 birds at one time. But over the course of the year, about 30,000 birds will leave the farm. So, I mean, I always tell people about 50,000 eggs will come through one door of the hatchery and about 30,000 chicks will go through the other. So, and that includes some of the eggs that we sell for other people to hatch too. So we do sell some hatching eggs for other farms. So that's kind of what we have said on the pheasants. There's about a total production of around 30,000 birds, but they're not all here at one time.
Now you also have quail?
Yes. And the quail are something that I used to have a breeding flock of quail like I do the pheasants, where I gather eggs every day and have that. As far as for the production of the quail, economies of scale have killed us, because we can only have, I mean, the amount that I have to pay for feed and the amount of labor that goes into them and all these input costs, I can buy them for about 2 cents more than I can produce them for a piece. So I've found that if I go ahead and buy them, it's in my best interest, so I can put my labor better elsewhere. So I buy day-old quail from another producer, and then we raise the quail up just like we do our pheasants and market them.
Now, in terms of disease, and I know we've talked about some of these things, but in terms of disease with the birds, what sorts of things do you do to to ensure that you don't have problems?
Well, first and foremost is our biosecurity. We will absolutely not let a bird, once it's left the farm, back on the facility. So that's kind of our first line of preventing us bringing something back to the farm. Second, I mean, we monitor anybody that would be coming in and going from the farm. We ask everybody questions and stuff when they're coming to the farm to make sure that nobody has been in contact with any other poultry or, I mean, any other avian species within a reasonable amount of time. I mean, I do disinfect a lot of times if school groups come here, I disinfect shoes, or people have been around other facilities, I'll have them put on like boots or something that they can wear so they are not possibly tracking something back and forth. We disinfect, I mean, a lot of stuff. I mean, if it's come from another farm or it's been possibly in contact with another farm, we disinfect. Control of flies is a big thing to keep disease problems down because, I mean, when we're raising wildlife, there is potential spread. It's not that you don't have to worry about other farms, it's the wild populations spreading disease. So you wanted to limit flies because they can be a vector for diseases back and forth from different wildlife that might be in the area. Sparrows are something that we have a problem with, and it always makes me really nervous that they're going to go over to one of my hillbilly neighbors and be eaten out of one of their chicken feeders and then come over to here and eat out of there and spread something back and forth. So the European starlings and the sparrows are managed around here. So
I mean, by managed, you mean
we shoot them.
You shoot them? Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with the flies?
The flies, it's kind of a cool. We have like a three-prong attack on the flies. We first of all, there's a chemical defense. We put fly spray out. It's permethrin is it's a fly deterrent, and it also kills them. And we'll spray the deer with that. We'll spray a lot of the facilities with that to just kind of keep the flies off the deer and around the pheasant feeders and waters and around the birds and stuff. And so that keeps the flies away. We also there's these little wasps that we release. They're tiny little things, and their life cycle is they lay eggs around the maggots, and they eat their larvae. The wasp larvae eat the maggots, I guess. So they're constantly killing fly larvae. And then we also have these fly traps that you saw all around the property, and they operate off of a fly pheromone. It's like a reproductive pheromone, and it causes them they love it. They just love the smell, and it smells like fly. It smells like fly sex, I guess, is what it smells like. And they all go in there, and we actually remove about 10 pounds of flies a week from the property.
Wow.
So yeah, lots of flies are removed from the property, and I mean that would be our greatest potential for problem is the flies. So we have to keep them down.
Okay, now what about? I mean, you've mentioned a few things with equipment, but other special equipment just for handling the pheasants.
Well, we saw the incubators. They are very specialized equipment for what we're doing with that. And then they have to be held at a specific temperature and humidity, and they have to be able to turn the eggs at intervals that would prevent the embryo from sticking to one side. So our incubators actually turn them every hour. As far as other equipment that we use the John Deere skid steer quite a bit for handling manure, manure spreader. We use the tractor quite a bit with an auger wagon on it where we're moving feed to the big feeders. Probably my most indispensable piece of equipment that I use every day is a little green wagon. Somebody ever asked me, what was the best birthday present you ever got? I'd have to say my little green wagon. And then they'll say, how old were you? Well, I was about 22. But I use that wagon every day because it's just short enough that I can get in the pheasant pens, and I can usually put like 2 big trash cans full of feed on it. If I have a feeder that I can't reach with the auger wagon, I'll just take those trash cans of feed and dump them into the feeders. So that is something I use all the time.
Yeah. What about fencing for the pheasant?
The pheasants require a pen that's about 5.5 feet tall on the sides, and the tops of the pens are nylon. It's nylon or polypropylene knotted netting, and that keeps the pheasants in and keeps wild birds out and keeps predators out. It also allows the birds to be able to fly around and fly up and not injure themselves, because that's something you have to worry about. Pheasants, especially, I told you before, we're trying to grow pheasants that are really, really explosive off the ground. They're going to jump up and fly like like a fire's been lit underneath of them. And if you have a pen that has a solid roof, they can hurt themselves. They can injure their necks and their heads. So you need a net, a top that's soft enough to absorb the shock of them hitting it continually and not hurt them. A big problem we have with predators is hawks and owls coming and trying to get them through the net. So you got to have something that's heavy duty enough to prevent hawks from getting in, but something soft enough that's not going to injure a bird trying to get out.
Really?
So it's kind of a happy medium, yeah.
So does that happen often though?
Yes, we'll lose 5 or 6 pheasants. A week during the fall when hawks are kind of migrating through this area, and owls and stuff. And there's nothing we can do about it. Our hands are tied as far as you can't do anything to remove hawks or owls. Occasionally we'll have one that gets its like feet caught in a net, and we'll call it conservation, and they'll come out and they'll relocate it.
Okay. And finally, with the pheasants, let's talk about the markets and where you're selling them to.
Okay. Majority of our pheasants are destined for hunting recreational purposes, where they'll be restocked on land is designated for pheasant hunting. The birds will be released on these properties, and then they'll be hunted on these properties. And it's the equivalent of like a put and take catfish pond, basically, where these birds are being stocked here for this purpose, for recreational purposes. And what it does, it keeps a pheasant population that would sustain hunting pressure that a wild population couldn't. Because if let's say you're a hunt club operator and you wanted to have 5,000 birds shot on your property, to raise 5,000 birds in a wild setting, you'd need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. And with this, you could have 60, 70, 80, 200. I guess 250 acres is the minimum for a hunt club. But you can raise and you can do all this on a smaller parcel of ground. And you can control it more, where you're saying, all right, this number of birds has been released in this area, and you can manage it better. So you can say, all right, well, we've harvested this number of birds, so that means that there should be this many birds left out here. And you're always going to lose some to predators, and some of them running off and escaping. But that is where the majority of our birds go to. Now, there are some of them that are destined for dog training. We're guys that train pointing dogs and setters and different types of bird dogs, come and buy birds from us to use an aid for training their bird dogs. And they probably buy about 15% of our birds. And then there's a very small group of our birds that get sold to guys for eating. They'll come and buy them just to butcher them to eat. And there's several guys that do that, but not very many. And then there's another group of guys that like to buy birds to release on their property just for the aesthetic purposes. They want to establish a pheasant population because they used to have pheasants when they were growing up, and now they don't. And a lot of that has to do with the loss of habitat. And everybody knows pheasants aren't really they're wild birds, but they're not native to North America. They were imported in the 1850s from China and the uplands of Mongolia. And so they're not per se a native bird to Illinois, but they've been here for a long, long time, and people like to see them. And they associate pheasants with wild places, and they like to see pheasants. So a lot of guys will come and buy birds just to release on their farms, just so they can see them again.
Now, how much are you getting for a pheasant? If somebody were to come in and say, I want to buy a bunch of pheasant from you.
We have a price breakdown. Usually, the way it works is October 1st, they are $8, and then it goes up 3 cents per day after that. And that is for our standard orders. Now, we have some price breaks if you're buying groups of over 1,000. And that's something that we discuss, and we work on some terms if we're making out some contracts with a larger buyer. But usually it starts at around $8, October 1, and then goes up each day because of feed costs. And our feed costs right now are just skyrocketed through the roof. Really? Because of the crop damage because of the floods this year, and everybody's buying corn for ethanol and not for pheasant food.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the deer.
Okay.
And what you're doing with the deer. First of all, what do you have for housing the deer?
Well, you kind of saw when we were bottle feeding the fawns, we've got several places where deer are have access to an inside area where they can come in and stay dry and get warm if it's kind of cooler out. But they all have access to outside runs where they have grass and places to run around and get in the sun. And that's when we're doing the bottle feeding. As they get older, we move them out to a larger enclosure. The pen we were in it would be a pasture, but it really doesn't have any vegetation in it, and that's pretty much because I want them to be eating the ration that I'm feeding them, so they're getting a balanced diet. In the wild, they'd be able to browse over hundreds of acres and find all that they need to have. In a wild setting, they're confined, so they'd maybe just eat this kind of grass and this kind of grass because that's all they'd be given. So this way they're getting a good balanced diet through the ration that I've mixed for them, and they're not just eating on the grass in the pens. And I have on occasion replanted those pens, but they eat it down really fast. I mean, everybody knows what deer do to their gardens and stuff, so you can only imagine when they're enclosed in an area. We're in the process of expanding the deer pens so that we can rotate them around different pastures so they can have some vegetation to feed on, some wild vegetation to feed on inside the pen, along with what they're eating in their ration.
Now, how many deer do you have?
Right now, I have 21 breeding does, so there'll be does that will be used in our breeding herd, and then we have the bucks. Right now, we have like 4 bucks. And then we have the fawns. And in each year, the fawns will be marketed, and some of them will replace some of the does in the doe herd, and some of those does will be sold. And so we try to keep it around 20 breeding animals, and then whatever bucks then we need to have on hand.
Now, what are you doing in terms of disease or problems like that?
Well, we are a part of the chronic wasting disease testing certification program through the state of Illinois. And what we do, if we have a deer that dies for any reason, whether it's old age or it gets injured and has to be put down, we submit the head to testing for chronic wasting disease. They examine the spinal fluid. So that's one thing that we do to help prevent the spread of any type of diseases. They've never found chronic wasting disease in a captive herd in Illinois. They've only found it in wild populations up in northern Illinois. So a lot of people blame deer farmers for spreading chronic wasting disease when it's actually hunters and guys that are taking wildlife from out west and bringing it back here is a more possible vectors for the spread of it. We are in the process of getting tested for tuberculosis and for brucellosis. That way we can be certified. And once you're certified for brucellosis and TB, you can be able to ship animals anywhere in the country as long as you have entry permits and your chronic wasting disease level is accepted at that state. Like Indiana doesn't allow any deer coming from another state that has CWD in the state, whereas Missouri has different requirements for entry. So every state is a little bit different.
Now, I mean, not everybody's raising deer. What sorts of special equipment do you need?
Well, I mean, the most obvious is the high fences. Deer, everybody knows, can jump really high. So we have 8-foot fences, which are required of us by the Department of Agriculture. And we have, areas where they can get away from people. I mean, they're deer. The deer we've seen, a lot of them are nice, but we have several that are not bottle fed, so they want to be able to get away and be secluded. So those are kind of the 2 essential things for raising deer. For handling the deer, we have a chute that we run them into that barn and put them in each of their stalls where we're collecting the deer urine, and then we set up the chute where we can run them back reverse through the system, and then they have to exit through this handling chute where it squeezes down on their sides, and that way they can't struggle. They can struggle, but they can't hurt themselves because it's kind of pinching them down, and then we can do any type of vet work that we need to do on them.
Now, you said that you're collecting the deer urine. So
yeah.
What's the process with that?
All right. Well, it kind of sounds like a very foreign thing when somebody says, "You do what to urine? You collect urine?" Especially my friends from like St. Louis and Chicago, they're like, "You are really a hillbilly," you know that? So yeah, the way that whole process works, I bought this scent company from a guy, and I kind of got his ideas. The way they were doing it, they had poured a concrete floor, and it was a sealed concrete floor, and they were the deer were peeing, going down a drain, and they had a bucket in this big enclosure that they were collecting off of. And I saw that as it was a good idea, but it had some flaws. I mean, there's two things that degrade urine, and that is bacterial growth and the degradation of urea to ammonia. And those are two things that destroy a scent product the fastest. So I started thinking ways that we can prevent those two things. Well, you can stabilize it by cooling it down. You can stabilize the urea by cooling it down to about just above freezing. You don't want to freeze it, which I'll cover in a second. And to limit bacterial growth, you want to be able to be collected on a clean surface, so it's not constantly building up. So the way we decide, we're collecting all on top of on plastic, on PVC, which can be cleaned every time a new group of deer is brought in, which is every 12 hours during the season. So we start collecting the 1st of October, and we bottle only during the season, and we are marketing for this season. So everything we collect this year will be sold this year, and we have no carryover from season to season. The majority of the other scent companies are bottling all summer long and all fall for next year. So they're constantly having a product on the shelf while they're producing a next season's crop, as I guess it would be called. And I don't see that as being I mean, I guess it can work sometimes, but it's not as good. And ours is a premium product that nobody has approached it this way. One, because it's so labor intensive, and two, is it requires a deer herd that's very, very tame that we can handle on a daily basis and still, efficiently produce urine. Now, if we were wanting to do this on a national level, we'd have to really make some big changes. Right now we are in the process of brokering several deals with several national chains, but they're aware that our limitations are, we have a volume, a given volume. We can't just say, oh, you want 100,000 bottles next year? Well, we can do that. We have a finite amount of bottles that we can produce in those 3 months of collection. So when I first started, I asked a guy how he did it, and he said, well, when we first started, we used a broomstick and a milk jug. And I said, there's got to be a better way. So that's how we came up with this barn. The way that the barn works is, the barn is kind of built on a hillside, and the deer enter through one end of the barn, and there's stalls all along the barn, and they're fed in there, so they're familiar with going in. And once they go into their stall, the doors are shut, and it's got a false floor on the bottom of it. It's like a PVC, or I'm sorry, it's fiberglass slats, like you might see in a nursery building in a hog barn. And that it's narrow enough that the droppings don't go through really, but the urine drips through, and then there's PVC boards below, so it drips through, goes to the boards, and then kind of goes chutes and ladders to each stall has a collection bucket. And then we'll have a group of does we'll put in the evening, and in the morning we'll come and collect the urine, take that out of there, hose it out, go up to the facility, the garage here is where we have a room in the garage where we do all that urine processing, bottle it, put the labels on the boxes, put it in the refrigerator, cool it down, and then we'll ship it out with a cold pack usually within. So it's like a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. So it's all really, really fast. And then we'll come back. Those does will have been run out. The pens will have dried out, and we'll run another group of deer in there. So it's constantly rotating. So the deer don't have to spend very long in the collection facility. So it's low stress on them. It's just a lot of manual labor. So.
Now, the deer urine is being used for hunters?
Yes. It is being marketed to hunters for a deer attractant. And the way I kind of explain deer scent, this is not a perfect interpretation, but it kind of gives people that might not be familiar with this an idea of what we're talking about. Deer urine is like the equivalent of a MySpace page for a deer. Kind of tells what their nutritional level is, what their reproductive status is, where they're kind of at in the herd, what their health level is. So it kind of tells a little bit about this individual. And what the goal is, most hunters want to shoot a big buck, so you're wanting to buy deer urine from a doe to attract a buck to come in and find out who the new girl is on the block. Or we do sell a small amount of buck urine, which is trying to antagonize a buck and a wild buck and say there's a new guy that's just moved in and he's looking to take over your territory. So basically, without having to get too much in detail, that is what deer urine is used for. It's to spark a curiosity in a wild deer to have them come out and check out what that will do is bring them closer to a hunter and help increase the odds of them getting a shot. So our slogan is bring them in close. And we've got a product I've been working on last year. We started, we've used a hormone therapy that we can bring the does in heat like they do for beef cattle or dairy cattle when they're wanting to use artificial insemination. So we're actually doing artificial insemination on the deer, and we're bringing them into heat, and we can pinpoint when they are in estrus, and we're bottling the urine while they're in estrus, and we're selling that as a premium product. I can only get 16 ounces per doe, but that stuff is smoking hot. And our first year testing it, a couple of my buddies, I gave them bottles, said, try this out, tell me how it works. A couple of them called me and said, oh man, that stuff, I got trapped in my tree. I guess my buddy put it on his boots, and a buck chased him out of the woods. Just wouldn't leave him alone. I mean, younger bucks are more apt to be very aggressive towards that because they're just not familiar with anything yet. But it's something I say you got to be careful because you can get hurt. I mean, knock on wood, nobody's been hurt yet. But I say don't put it on yourself. Put on some towels or something. Don't put it on yourself.
Yeah. Now, where exactly are you selling your products to?
Well, the internet is a huge thing for us, and that's really what the future of our industry is the internet. Because it allows somebody who's basically a nobody reach so many more people. And it's a very, very inexpensive form of advertising, and that's where everybody does a lot of their shopping nowadays. They get online and they find out what information is out there, and that's where they make their purchasing decisions. So that's where we're doing a lot of the marketing for the deer scent. I have several retail stores that do buy it wholesale from us and sell it. And I also have, tons of guys that come and just buy it straight off the farm, just word of mouth, and people that have seen some of our ads or talked to me, or they'll just come and pick it up right off the farm. So those are pretty much how we market the deer scent. We've got a couple deals I was talking about with several of the larger chains that are, I don't want to name any names right now because it's still kind of in the infancy of developing these relationships, but a couple of the big names have taken an interest in our product just because of the way we're doing it, and nobody else has approached it this way. So maybe the next couple of years we'll be going to a national level, and we'll need to increase our facilities at a different location and change some of the things that we're doing on that end just so we can meet the demand for the volume.
What would you have to do to change your facilities exactly?
Just expand.
Really?
I'd keep doing exactly the same way, but it would be expanding the facility. It'd be, right now I have 6 collection stalls. I would need to increase that to, whatever it would be. I'd probably need to hire on some more work and get my brother to be here more often. My brother Steele, he does, he's half of all this, but he's working right now. He's out baling hay right now. So I'll probably hear about this for years and years and years. He was putting up hay and I was here giving an interview. But yeah, Steele is a half partner in all of this, and I couldn't do the things I do without him because I'm only on the farm. Monday and Tuesday during the semester, I'm up in Macomb taking classes, so he's here doing the day-to-day stuff on Monday and Tuesday. So, without him, we couldn't do any of the stuff that we do because, he is really indispensable.
Great. Now, finally, let's talk about the buffalo.
Okay.
How many buffalo do you have, first of all?
We have 9 cows, and we have 1 herd bull, and we've got 4 calves from last year, and then we've got 4 calves that have been born now, so that's 18.
And they don't have any housing out there?
No. The buffalo really don't like to go inside. Occasionally they'll come up to the barn here and they'll go into the barn. They really don't like spending much of their time inside. And that's just because they're a wild animal. It's kind of like the pheasants and the deer. They really don't like spending time inside because they like to feel like they can escape. They like to be able to feel like they are not confined, where if there was a threat, they could get away from it. So the buffalo spend most of the time, even like on a hot day like today, we saw them there sitting out in the sun when they could have been in the shade. They just are very, very used to being in harsh conditions, and that's what they would prefer.
Now, what about fencing?
The fencing we have for the buffalo is very substantial. It's high tensile, tight lock, woven wire fencing that's 8 feet tall, and that would prevent them from going through it or over it.
Have you ever had any kinds of problems with that?
No. Well, again, knock on wood, we've never had a problem with an escape or an animal that has tried to come through. I've actually seen a buffalo when we were unloading out of a trailer once. It was startled and it ran right at the fence headlong as fast as it could. Hit that fence, and the fence kind of stretched out and flung him back. So it did exactly what the guy was telling me that said it was selling. He said, it's going to give, but it's not going to break, and it's going to spring them back. So it's going to absorb their shock, the initial shock of them. So it's not going to it's not like hitting a concrete wall where it'll break their neck, which would be bad if they hit it and then it kind of gives and then it pushes back.
You haven't really said how you came to the decision of getting buffalo.
Well, that was kind of a wild deal. My dad, ever since I was a little kid, had said, we're going to get a buffalo. He also said we're going to get an elephant too. So, but we never got an elephant. He said, hey, I got that baby buffalo. It's going to be here next week. He'd always tell us that, and we'd always, it's going to be baby buffalo, and he just do it to tease us. And for his birthday, we all four of us kids talked about it, and we decided to buy him a buffalo. We were all, I guess we were freshmen and sophomores in college, and we had raised beef cattle for years. And when I went to college, we had the pheasants, we had the beef cows, we had hogs. We'd not started raising the deer yet, and my dad and I talked about it, and he's like, something's got to give. You're not going to be here. And this was when I was doing my undergrad, so I was actually away from the farm every day. I was commuting to Jacksonville from here, so I'd get up in the morning, do chores, drive over there, go to class, then come home at night. I actually played football over there for 5 years, so it was there were a lot of long days in there. And he said, we can't keep doing all this. We got to reduce something. So we decided to reduce the cow herd. And so we had all this pasture that my mom had a couple of horses on. And it wasn't probably a year and a half after we got rid of the cows that we decided to buy a couple buffalo. And so we were at an auction barn. And my dad kept kind of saying, he's like, hey, we need to get these buffalo, or we need to get some more calves for the feedlot. Because a lot of our customers that were buying beef for their freezer from us still wanted them. And beef prices at the time were just through the roof. And we were at this auction. My brothers and sisters and I, we talked, and we're like, hey, let's buy Dad this buffalo. And we ended up buying 4 of them for him. And we put them in the feedlot, and we raised them up and sold them, and they tasted really good, and we really liked buffalo, and we thought it was just, as good or better as any beef we've ever had. So from that point on, we kind of started raising buffalo. And the next year, my dad ended up buying a couple for himself from another herd, and then that's kind of what started the herd that we have here now.
Great. Now, what do you need to do in terms of disease for your herd?
For the buffalo? Buffalo, what's very nice about them, they require very little maintenance. They have, in this area, we're not as worried about brucellosis or brucellosis, especially since we're a closed herd. As far as like other diseases that you have to worry about, like pink eye, really don't have to worry about that. Other things that you can vaccinate them for things you'd vaccinate your cattle for, like black leg or like lepto or anything like that. You can vaccinate them for. But really, what we've found with the buffalo is the less you do to handle them, the better off they're going to be, because they're so big and they can get so rowdy that they end up hurting themselves worse and getting themselves stressed out when you're handling them than if you're actually doing it. So the really only veterinary care that we give them, we worm them once a year. And other than that, they kind of are pretty sufficient. If there is a problem, let's say one of them gets injured or something, instead of trying to do the vet work and doctoring them up and everything, we'll probably just butcher it. So that way, and we'll eat it ourselves for our family, because that way you're not pumping it full of a bunch of antibiotics and those are things that can really, for buffalo and people that are wanting to buy buffalo from us, they're wanting it for a healthy aspect. They're wanting it for healthy living and healthy diet, and they don't want something that's pumped full of a bunch of hormones and antibiotics and stuff. So that is, that's kind of how we do it. We don't do a lot of vet stuff or try to do any work on them like that.
In terms of equipment to deal with buffalo, there's got to be some other specialized...
Yes, there are. We have a handling facility for the buffalo, which consists of several chutes. They get smaller and smaller as we run them down the line. There is a head gate that we talked about buying. It's about $8,000 for this head gate. It's like a beef head gate, just like that, but it has a crash gate on the front of it, so it actually, they run into it, and it like the fence, it absorbs that initial shock when they're just running into it, and then you clamp it down on their head and you squeeze them down so you can do any of the work on them. But at this point, we've not bought one of those yet. We've not had to do any of the vet work on them, and if for some reason we needed to knock one of them down to do some vet work on it, we do have a tranquilizer gun that we could tranquilize it, but then again, you're using drugs and stuff. We've not had to do that.
And just as you mentioned a second ago, you're pretty much selling your buffalo as meat.
Yes.
To specific people?
Yeah, we've got a list of about 30 people that come and buy like a whole or a half or a quarter buffalo, and they're kind of on like a yearly basis. Everybody's kind of got their name in, so as we have buffalo ready, then we call them and say, we're taking a buffalo over to the processor, and then the processor will call them and say, how do you want it cut up? And they'll say, well, I want this many steaks and this many ribeyes and this many pounds of ground buffalo. So that's kind of how we handle that. And we leave it all up to the consumer for how they want to have their buffalo processed. I mean, they could say they want it all cut up and put it in a hamburger if they want, or they can say, well, let's get as many steaks out of it as we possibly can.
So, I mean, what's the difference in cost comparing buffalo to beef?
Production cost, it costs more to produce buffalo because it takes longer. It can take up to 24 months to produce a buffalo, where it'd be 12 to 14, I think, for a beef cow or a beef calf. They're less efficient at converting feed into gain, so it takes more feed to convert them into gain. They require more space per per animal per square foot per head. And just because, I mean, they are bigger and they're kind of aggressive sometimes. So that's another thing you got to figure in. As far as selling them on the hoof right now, we sell them for $1.10 a pound on the hoof, which is probably something we're going to have to increase a little bit we do increase with rising corn prices and input costs, but it's pretty, I mean, it's maybe 10% higher than what beef is. And really, I mean, if you went online and tried to buy buffalo meat, it'd be a lot more than that if you're buying it directly off our farm. And the reason for that is most of the people that are buying from us are people that bought beef from us before, and they're not rich and wealthy people. I mean, they're just local people that we've grown up with, and they have been buying beef from us for years, and now they're buying buffalo from us. So we're not trying to gouge them or anything like that. So we're trying to keep it as close as we can to selling our beef prices.
Now, you mentioned out in the field something about genetics and buffalo.
Yeah.
Can you
now, I don't know what the scientific documentation behind this is, but we have noticed that there are two types of buffalo, it seems like. There are what we'd call the nickel buffalo, like you might see on a buffalo nickel or Indian head nickel, that has a really skinny hindquarters, and it's got a great big hump, and they're really light colored, and they've got a sandy brown back, and then there's the black buffalo, and that's kind of like the bull that we took a look at. He's very massive through his hindquarters. He's got a lot of dark features. His skin's a lot darker. His fur's a lot darker, and I don't know what caused that or why there is two types in the population, and I mean, some of the calves are born to look like more the nickels, and some of them look more like the blacks. So I don't know where that all comes from. But one thing we've found with buffalo, and I mean a lot of people know, because buffalo used to have so many in their population. There used to be 30 million buffalo roaming across the prairies of North America, and that's like right when the first European settlers arrived. In the end of the Civil War, there was, I mean, less than, I think, 300 left after the Civil War was over, and they started eradicating them across the entire West. So buffalo have gone through a really tight bottleneck, and that has caused a very, very great bottleneck effect in their genetic diversity. So they went from having a very, very genetic diverse population to going down to only a small group of individuals contributing genes to a population. And so inbreeding was really a problem for a long time. It still is something that people have to watch out with buffalo, is inbreeding problems, and you'll get a lot of times if their populations are too inbred, you'll start getting midget buffalo, dwarf buffalo that don't grow very fast, are very, very inefficient. And so that's something you always kind of have to watch out for. So if with buffalo populations in captivity like this, you're wanting to make sure you're doing your best to improve the genetic diversity. You don't want to keep inbreeding for too long because you can start seeing lots and lots of problems.
So what are you doing here specifically to
Well, right now, we haven't been doing it for very long. So our herd bull that we've been using since our first year we started breeding buffalo, I think was in 2004. So we've had him for 4 years now. Yeah, I think we've had him for 4 years now. And he probably will, within the next 2 years, will probably be sold and will be replaced with another bull from another herd that is clean, basically, no TB, no brucellosis, and they're tested and everything, and is somebody that would not be related to our cows, because we'll be keeping some calves back to use as replacement heifers, and we'll be selling some of the old cows. So we'll be using, we don't want to be back to a father to daughter kind of thing where you're going to see problems with maybe growth or, your birth rates and fertility can go down when you start inbreeding like that, and they start liking banjo music and that kind of stuff.
What kind of cost are we talking about to get a new bull?
And it kind of depends on who you're buying them from. We might just talk to a couple of guys we know that raise buffalo and say, we'll trade you our herd bull for your herd bull. And so then you're changing out two different genetics that way. I might say, well, we've got a couple bull calves in here. What if we switched you a couple of our bull calves and then we grow out theirs and they grow out ours, and if one of them looks good, and we'll take that one. If you went to like a big buffalo ranch and wanted to buy a herd bull, you could be looking at $4,000 or $5,000 maybe if you're wanting to buy from like a premier herd that was, this is the one to buy. You could spend a lot of money. You'd probably spend as much money on one as you wanted to spend. It could go up and up and up as far as people that you're talking to and different individuals that are involved with it. But it could be as high as, like I said, $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000, or it could be down in the $1,100 range.
That's interesting. What's really interesting to me is that here you've put together this really large business, kind of yourself, and with the help of your brother, and I think your sister's probably helped you out with some as well.
Oh yeah.
And you're funding your college degree through that. Can you talk a little bit about your college and
Yeah.
what you've done?
As an undergrad, I went to Illinois College in Jacksonville, and I wanted to go someplace fairly close to home so I could continue doing what I was here on the farm. So I commuted from Jacksonville, it's about a 45-minute drive from here to Jacksonville, so it's not really bad at all. And at Illinois College, I first got there, I was kind of just not sure what I wanted to do. I was kind of thinking I wanted to be a school teacher like my folks were, and kind of what was the family tradition to do, but I knew I really liked doing this, so I kind of thought maybe I'll be an ag teacher and a football coach or something, because I really enjoyed playing football, and I played there at Illinois College for 5 years, so I really wanted to do something along those lines. And while I was there, I took a couple classes from a professor. Her name was Dr. Deborah Beal, and she completely opened my eyes to this whole world of science. I've always been interested in nature and wildlife and the outdoors, but she kind of opened my eyes to a different side of it. And she taught her major that she taught was environmental science. And I thought, wow, this is really great. I really like this. And I started taking her classes and really enjoyed it, and had a lot of fun taking her classes. And she had taken us across the country. We went from I've been up in the North Woods with her on classes where we're hiking through the Upper Peninsula, kayaking on Lake Superior. She took a class out into the Grand Canyon before, I think. I've been down to the Everglades with her and her husband on 5 different occasions, paddling with alligators and going on different tours. I've been down to Mexico with her twice. so she's like completely broadened my horizons on all this stuff with as far as the science part of this business goes. And while I was there, I decided on an environmental science major. She kept encouraging me to take biology classes along with environmental science. She's like, you really could be a double major. You know, you could get environmental science and you could get biology because they kind of go together. I mean, they really feed off each other because environmental science is a lot of the application of the things in the biological field, and a lot of the reasons you might want to learn stuff in the biological field is so you can apply it to environmental science. So I decided to get a double major in environmental science and in biology. And I also ended up getting a minor in chemistry for some crazy reason that I'll never ever figure out why I did that, other than the fact that I don't know. I still can't come up with a good... Maybe there was a good-looking girl in the class. I don't know. But I did get a minor in chemistry. And I graduated, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it. I mean, I had this farm. The reason I developed the farm was to pay for school. It was a means to an end. It was never supposed to be the end, because I just thought I'd make enough money to pay for school and then go on to do whatever else I was planning on doing. And really, truly, what I had seen myself doing was going to school for 4 years, playing football, having a good time, getting a degree, and then going to OCS and going to the Marine Corps. That is what I saw myself doing. And the way this farm has developed, it kind of has given me another opportunity to do something else. I still tried to pursue the Marine Corps avenue after I graduated, but I suddenly got injured playing football, and it was a disqualification for service. So, unfortunately, I don't know, maybe my mom and my grandma keep saying it was God telling me I need to do something else. But that kind of helped me say, okay, well, this is maybe what I was meant to do. So I decided to keep doing the farm thing. And my professor, Dr. Beal, she is now the reason I'm in grad school. After I graduated from Illinois College in, I guess it was 2006, 2007, I don't really remember. She kept saying, you need to go to grad school. You need to go to grad school. It'd be a great thing for you. You do really well. And I'm not Johnny student. I never have been. I like going to school, but I never saw myself going on and getting a master's and all this. She's like, no, you need to do this. You need to go on to school. So she convinced me to go to Western and get a master's in biology. So right now I'm 1 semester away, hopefully, from graduating with a master's in biology. All I have to do now, I've got all my classes taken, I just need to complete my thesis. And that's what I kind of talked a little bit about what my research is going to be. We're looking at, we're correlating the ringneck pheasant ornaments, sexual ornamentation, like the tail length and the spurs and the UV reflectance of their feathers. We're trying to correlate that with the mobility of the sperm and seeing if there's, basically, do these ornaments honestly advertise how fertile a male is. So can a female look at a male and say, well, this is a good male and he's fertile because he's got a long tail and he's got big spurs. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. And I could probably go on and on about that for another half hour, but usually people start falling asleep when I start talking about my research.
No, that's cool. That's great. So real quick, what are the key things in pheasant? You kind of mentioned a couple of them, the tails and the spurs.
Well, that's one thing we're looking at right now. Is I'm trying to find a couple papers on things that people have already found. Like one guy did a paper on the title of the paper was "Pheasant Hens Prefer Males with Large Spurs," and his take on it was he took a genetic sampling of a group of male pheasants, and then he put these males with this group of females, and then came back and tested the paternity of all the chicks, and the majority of the chicks were sired by males with longer spurs. So he goes, aha, these females are selecting for males with longer spurs, which, I can kind of see that I can see his argument there, and that's what I'm using in my thesis is that if these females are selecting for these specific traits, then there should be some sort of reproductive benefit. In nature, there's there's not waste. There's no really waste. It's like they're not looking at specific things just for no reason. There are reasons behind, like peacocks prefer males with longer tails because that signals to them, there's several hypotheses about why that is. I mean, one, it could mean that they have a low parasite load. One may mean that they've got this great big tail, but they're still able to escape from predators. They must be really good males because they've got a big encumbrance, but still they're able to get away and be reproductively active. And so I'm trying to kind of go back and forth with some of the stuff that other people have done, some of the other research. I'm kind of standing on the shoulders of giants on some of this animal behavior stuff. But there's other reasons, I don't know, there's a couple things I want to look at on with the pheasants. That same project that guy did, and nobody has proposed this yet, that the spurs that you see in galliforms, like chickens and turkeys and pheasants, that's that little bony projection on the backside of their leg. They always say they're being used for intraspecific competition between males, like they're being used for fighting, combat. So like you see these cockfights down in South America, these roosters are jumping at each other and using their spurs to injure and damage the other one. And really, I don't think that's the case. I really don't think that because growing up here, I've watched a lot of the chickens fighting in the barn and pheasants fighting each other. And the spurs are very, very seldomly actually contact. They're very seldomly using contact in these fights. And so I kind of have a feeling that there's something else going on. And I think the reason these males that this guy found in his paper were more successful in these reproductions were that they were actually using these spurs. I call it the bull rider hypothesis. I mean, if a bull rider was riding a bull and had no spurs on, they'd be thrown off a lot faster than if he does. So the males with longer spurs are able to mechanically stay on the female a little bit longer to secure more breeding. So that's kind of where, I don't know. I've got to clarify a lot of these thoughts a lot more in my head before I actually develop them, but that's kind of what my research is centered around.
Oh, that's great. That's really interesting. Now, this is a lot of work to do here.
There's never a dull moment, that's for sure.
And you're going to school on top of all that. Who else is helping you besides, you have a brother?
Yes, my brother does tons and tons, and my sister does a ton. My sister Shelby, I mean, you've seen what she's done today. I mean, she's always, I feel so fortunate and so blessed to have the family that I have. It's this great support system. We are always supporting each other and everything that we're doing. And I mean, I feel like I get the lion's share of that support. I mean, I have a lot of different things going on, and I all the time will call them and say, hey, I'm going to be a little bit late. Can you go gather eggs for me? Or I've got this going on and this going on. Can you give me a hand doing this? And they always kid me I don't pay very well, but they get compensated somewhat for it. But I'm always there to help them out if they're needing something, or I try to be at least. But I do think that I get the better deal because they are very, very good about helping me out.
So how does that work? I mean, if they're helping you out, are you paying them?
Yeah. I pay. Steele is what he's doing is he's buying a share in the business. So every hour he works is going towards him buying his share in the business. Investing. I mean, what we figured. I mean, we got half of the equipment, half of this and this and this. So eventually he will be a 50% partner in it. I mean, Shelby and Shiloh. I mean, both of them have helped out on different times, and Matt, and I'll pay them. I'll pay them for helping out. And I mean, a lot of times, I mean, they don't want to be paid. They're like, no, I just want to help you out. But I mean, so I try to I pay them, and they'll kid me after that. Oh, you don't ever pay me. It's a good thing there's sleep over there.
No, that's great. Now, how about government programs and government issues and things like that? I mean, wildlife is totally different.
Yes, we have lots and lots of questions about that. Usually that's the first question is, well, how can you guys raise deer or pheasants? They're wild animals. How do you license to do that? And there is a permit called the Class B game breeding license. And that gives the holder the right to raise this. You can't collect from the wild. That's totally different. You can't go out and take them from the wild and raise them from there. You have to buy them from a licensed breeder. So somewhere down the line, somebody got them from the wild, but it was many, many generations ago. So the license that we have allows us to raise deer, game birds, turkeys. I guess you can have rabbits, there's ferrets, there's all kinds of native wildlife that being raised from these permits. And that's through the state level. Through the federal level, we used to have a federal migratory game bird permit, which was when we had Canada geese and some ducks. That was a while ago. We are a part of the polarium typhoid testing in our program, where we blood test all of our entire pheasant, or 10% of our pheasant flock every year for polarium typhoid, which is a national organization. I said before, we test for avian influenza, or we have tested for avian influenza. And so, I mean, we answer to a lot more bureaucracy than, say, a cattle farmer or a horse farmer, because we are managing wildlife. And the way the state of Illinois deems it is, deer belong to the state of Illinois. They're just allowing us to raise them. And it's kind of funny. I mean, where most of our deer came from, which is Pennsylvania, they are individuals' property. They are owned by the individual. That's the way. That's just like somebody's cow or somebody's dog. If you bought a deer, you own it. It's yours. And then once they come into Illinois, they're owned by the state, but we are taking care of them, and they're allowing us to take care of them. So I don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of kind of gray area in the laws on that. I always say, though, well, if they're the state's deer, then I'll just send them the feed bill at the end of the year, and they can foot the feed bill if they really want to have ownership in them. So yeah, there is a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that we have to go through when we're wanting to move deer into another state, or from state to state, or if we're wanting to import deer. So yeah, that's something that we have to deal with. I mean, if the cattle industry or hog industry had to go through the rigorous testing that we have to go through here with the deer or the pheasants, it would break the industry. The industry would completely fall apart. So that's something that we've had to combat really a lot, and we're really hoping that eventually that deer get under the Department of Ag and the pheasants get into the Department of Ag, where they're managed like they do traditional livestock.
Are there movements to do that?
Yes, there are, but up to this point, they have not been effective. We've got several lobbyists for the Illinois Deer Farmers Association that have been trying to do that for a long time, but who knows how that'll all turn out. I mean, it would be good for us, because we right now we already answer the Department of Ag for our health testing stuff, but we still have to answer to DNR because they say that the deer are theirs. The deer belong to the public because they're a wild animal. So, I don't know.
That's interesting. What about the buffalo? Is it just...
No, buffalo, it's kind of interesting. Even though buffalo are a native species to Illinois, they're kind of in the same lot as cattle. They're just kind of grouped in that same genre, I guess, of animals.
So then the buffalo are underneath the
Department of Ag.
Department of Ag.
Yeah.
Interesting. What about your neighbors? I mean, you're doing some really different things here compared to the normal farm.
Yeah, that's probably the number one challenge that we're facing right now at this time is our neighbors, the urban sprawl that's kind of engulfing us. We've lived here on this property for 30 years. I've been here for 25. My folks have been here 5 years before I was born. So we've been here close to 30 years, and as the years progress, more and more people have been moving to the country, and we're starting to become surrounded. Our little farm is becoming an island in the middle of an urban sprawl. And many of the people are very, very, they're very curious about what we're doing, very interested. There's half a dozen kids that come down here on a regular basis and help me bottle feed the fawns and help gather the eggs, or just come out to see the horses. My mom takes them on horseback rides. So there's a lot of kids that are from a urban environment that want to learn about the rural area, and they love living in the country, and their parents moved out here for that reason, so they can be exposed to the rural life. But then there's some of them that are a bunch of, I don't know, I could say a lot of not very nice things about them, because they tried to get our farm shut down last year.
Really?
They tried saying that our farm was a health hazard, that they accused us from doing everything from spreading bird flu they're possible spreading bird flu, histoplasmosis, airborne E. coli. They tried to sick the EPA on us, saying that we were polluting the rivers, saying we were dumping illegally. They were trying to say that we were didn't have permits to do what we were doing, saying that animal welfare stuff, we weren't taking care of the animals. They made all these just completely unjustified accusations, trying to get us shut down is what they were trying to do. And that really was not good. I mean, they caused us a lot of grief on that. We ended up spending a lot of money on an attorney trying to fight this whole thing, because they found in 1999 our county decided that this area between Petersburg and Athens would be a great rural residential zone, or R1 zone. So they decided to zone this area R1 so they could build houses. But they never came out to assess what was going on in this area. So there was like a huge chunk of farm ground that got zoned R1 that should not have ever been. So not a big deal, because nobody ever came out to check it. So we were zoned R1. Didn't really matter. We're grandfathered in our agriculture because we had all this stuff going. Well, when their lawyer found out about that our property was zoned R1, they started saying, well, wait a second, how can Sullivans do all this stuff? Because it's zoned improperly.
Huh. How did you end up dealing with all this stuff?
It finally all came to a head about a month ago. The county board had a big vote on it, and they voted 5-0 in our favor. So all 5 of the county board members said Sullivans are legal, they are doing everything right, they are not in violation of anything that we have found, and on every step of the way I said I've invited anybody into our house. I said, I'll come down, I'll give you a tour, I'll show you everything we do. We have no secrets to hide. Anybody's welcome here to see what we do. And they said, you guys are fine. They said, as far as farms goes, you guys are doing very, very well as far as trying to protect the environment, helping out the waters. And it's not like it's a huge hog farm where we're having a lagoon that's dumping animal waste into a stream. And we're trying to preserve the natural. We're going back to nature. We're raising wildlife here, for Pete's sake. So it's been kind of quiet the last couple weeks from them. They haven't said anything, but it's something that we're going to have problems with. I have a feeling down the road it's going to be something that we'll always have a rub from now on. And it's just when you deal with people that don't understand wildlife and don't understand how nature works and how agriculture works, that they see it as a threat to their safety. One lady thought the buffalo were going to get loose and stampede her children. She stood up in a public meeting and said, I'm afraid the buffalo are going to get loose and they're going to stampede our children. And another lady was scared because the pheasants, we had a snowstorm come through and ripped down the pheasant nets, and a bunch of pheasants got loose, and the pheasants came up into her yard and drank some water out of her dog water bowls, and she said that was just horrible for her. She just couldn't stand it. We had just a lot of people. One lady was scared and she's going to get Lyme's disease from the deer because deer ticks are on deer. And I said, well, we actually put a tick spray on the deer to keep ticks off of them. And I said, so you don't have a dog in your house, do you? Oh, yeah, we have a dog. And I said, it doesn't go outside though. Oh, yeah. Well, it could just as likely be on your dog as it could be on one of our deer. So the county board saw all this, and they really, they went through and they looked at everything very closely because they wanted to do their job, but they found that we were doing absolutely nothing wrong, and these people were completely unjustified in their complaints. So all it's we spent a bunch of money on an attorney. They spent tons and tons of money on their attorney, and they lost. So they have not said anything much. And what's funny is a lot of their kids are some of the kids that still come down, and it kind of makes me feel good that they go home and the kids tell about what they did today, and they come down here and play, So.
What do you think what's the future for wild game farming?
Well, the near future, I mean, it seems to be very good because, well, one, the baby boomer generation grew up hunting. I mean, that's when they did a lot of hunting with their dads growing up. So they are very, very outdoor oriented. So sport shooting is something that generation, there's a lot of people that still enjoy that. In the next 20 years will be very good for us as these guys start retiring. They got more time on their hands. But after that, I mean, it could be a little bit less because there's less and less people from my generation that are actually out and enjoying the outdoors in that aspect. There's a more recreation outside, bicycle riding, kayaking, this type of stuff. But the shooting sports and stuff are something that a lot of kids don't have access to. And it kind of concerns me down the road. Is there going to be as big of a demand for pheasants for people to do sport shooting as there is now? Or is there going to be a demand for deer scent now as there was now? So and that's something that always concerns me down the road, is to look in the far view and say, well, are we going to be able to do this for the next 50 years? Or is this something that's just going to be a flash in the pan and kind of disappear? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it all turns out. I know, for one thing, we're going to need to move from this location. As much as I love this place, I mean, we've kind of maxed out expansion-wise what we can do here. So I'm looking and in the process of expanding the farm on another location. So
Have you picked someplace? Or?
There's the farm that we have the farm ground up the road, and there's a couple other properties that I'm looking at to possibly buy. The land market right now is so high, though, in Menard County, that it's hard to justify spending $6,000 or $8,000 an acre to raise pheasants on it, when you can raise pheasants on pretty low quality ground. They don't need the best black dirt in Central Illinois to raise them on. You can raise them on sand if you wanted to. So that's we've got a couple places that we've been looking at, and I would say in the next probably 2 years we'll have another branch of the farm someplace else, and we'll start shifting more towards that other location.
You know, there's so many difficult things that are kind of coming towards
you.
On
the horizon.
What's making you get up in the morning and go out and do your morning chores and things like that?
Pretty much the fact that I get to do this myself, and either if I fail, it's going to be up to me, and if I succeed, it's going to be up to me. Hopefully, it's not up to my neighbors, but it's that. I guess that's what I love about it the most. Is it allows me to have my own destiny in my own hands, and allows me to do something I love, and it allows me to do something that I get to use my education for something, and it's a challenge. I guess that's more than anything. When you say what makes you get up in the morning and do it, it's this challenge of being able to say, yeah, I did this. I started from nothing, and I built this business into here. So I think that's probably what does it. It's that challenge of say, well, can I do this? Let's try.
Great. Well, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
And this is the question that everybody gets asked.
Okay.
That I do an oral history interview with, and that's the fact that this is an oral history interview, and you even mentioned it earlier that this is going to be around forever.
Right.
And one day down the road, there could be some great-great-grandkids of Cavan Sullivan that walk into...
I got to get a girlfriend first.
Well, but it could happen that they walk into the museum and say, hey, look, there's great-great-grandpa's interview. What's the thing you want them to find out from here?
Well, I hope they don't lose their roots. If I end up having grandkids, which, who knows if that's in my future or not, I hope that they remember where they came from, and that's kind of another part of what I bring to the table is, I feel like I'm deeply rooted in agriculture in Illinois. I've been farming my entire life. Ever since I was little, my first memory was helping my dad milk cows, and then to look back and say, my dad's father did that most of his life. He was a farmer. And then his dad's did that his whole life. He was a farmer. And so as long as the Sullivans have been in the United States, they came over from Ireland during the potato famine, and they were farmers back in Ireland. So as long as you go back in history, the Sullivan family have been farmers. And I feel very, very connected to my history, not only here, my roots in Illinois, but all the way back into Ireland and way back into my ancestors' history. That I think that's really neat, and I hope that any future generations of the Sullivan family, even if they aren't farmers, they still remember these roots and the values that has taught all of us about hard work and being able to weather out storms. Whether it's actual physical nature storms or storms that have been brought on by neighbors or bureaucracy or anything like that. So I guess just remember where they came from, and remember the people that have worked really hard to do this. And like I said before, I could have done nothing that I have done without my parents. And I wish they could be here today, but they're out gallivanting across the country on their second honeymoon. So my dad retired this year, so he decided that they'd been talking for a long time that they're going to go to Hawaii. So he took my mom, for their anniversary was on June 9th, and took her to Hawaii for their second honeymoon. So I wish they could be here.
Oh, they could watch.
Yeah, they can log on the internet and watch it someday.
There you go. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
It's been great.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.